Hello, beautiful dragons. I am your host, Heather, and we have special guest Katie here today from katieloudoeslife.com.
Hello again, everybody. Nice to see
Hey,
you back.
we are back with this month's book club. So if you didn't join us with reading the book or didn't see last video, this month was The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. Katie actually has it the correct way around, unlike me.
Oh, God.
Yes. So, I guess we just start. I will first say that you should probably just get the paperback, because I got the hardback. I love hardback books, but there isn't anything interesting.
Honestly, what a letdown, everybody.
It's just green underneath the book sleeve.
I mean, I suppose, though, actually, I do get why it's green, because of all the books in the library.
Yeah, that does make sense once you've read it, but I guess in the lore of the story, and it is like, oh, this is Nora's, main life book. It is a bit, though.
Perhaps they
It doesn't even have, on the front my life or anything like that, because that was all on the front of the other ones.
I mean, they could have jazzed the green up, couldn't they? But
yeah, it does have a book stamp in it, but you probably have that too. It's got the stamp for the library.
Do I have that?
Do you have that?
Hold up. No, I don't think I do have that.
Oh, you don't have this?
You don't get that in the paper one, no.
Well then, my book is literally from the Midnight Library, except it's got a book sleeve on it.
I looked through a bit, but no, nothing. It's not even in the back.
It's not even in the back.
The bits in the back are like this bit.
Oh, I've just got plain green, and then a lovely bit about Matt Haig there.
Oh yeah, Matt's on the very back.
Yeah,
with all his other books.
What? I didn't think about that, but now you said it. Yeah, this pretty much is it's supposed to be a Midnight Library book.
It makes sense.
It makes sense
once you've read the book.
Yeah.
But
when you just get it and you see that it's green, it is a little disappointing. Though I will say, when I first got it and I saw the little library stamp card, I was like, oh, that's cute.
Maybe that's how they made up for it, because they put nothing on the actual book cover.
Yeah.
God, you don't get that experience in the paperback.
No, you don't. But the paperback is cheaper.
It was.
That is the case with every single book that is hardback or paperback. So where do we begin?
I mean, I don't know. I feel like this is a tough one, because although it follows a story, it's not the same in the way the Magpie Society was, where you start with an event and then the event follows through. I mean, this is an event, but
I will say, obviously there are going to be spoilers that we'll talk about. But right now this isn't spoilers. But if you do pick up this book, you kind of need to be aware that it does start off with depression and potential suicide, like a suicide attempt.
Yeah. So obviously, if that's kind of a triggering thing for you right now, I wouldn't go for this. But at the end of the book, once you've read it all, it is kind of like, I think it is good for that kind of thing if you've been struggling with that. But obviously, if you're at a really heightened point right now, I wouldn't recommend because of the first few bits. But it isn't all about death and suicide and depression. There are bits of fun and light moments and stuff.
That event has to happen, otherwise the whole book isn't a book, because the whole point of the book, I think, is to appreciate life.
Yeah, pretty
much. And not just life, but the life you are living and have lived,
to remember you could, because we've all done that thing. The book basically follows the thing of oh, well, I want to do this, or oh, I wanted to do that. I could have been this, I could have been that. When the reality is you are all of those things combined into your one life. But obviously, it doesn't mean you have to be every single thing at every single minute, every single day of the life you were in. Just because you don't pick a certain path and you're oh, I wonder what that life would have been like, doesn't mean that your life is valued any less, because it's your life at the end of the day. Whatever you decide to do with it you know, that's what you decide to do with it. You know, regardless what anybody else says, it's your
Yeah.
life, you
And
know?
it does touch on like some of the dreams or ideas that are actually projected onto you from other people. So like she goes through all these different, like at first when she's going through different lives, she's just picking up ones that are other people's dreams, that she's just a part of that life rather than looking at herself.
I think the most interesting one probably is the Olympian life, because basically her dad didn't he want to be an Olympian, and then he had an injury and then he couldn't
He was a
do it.
rugby player.
Yeah, something like that.
So he was a rugby player and then he got an injury and he couldn't do it anymore.
So then he
And
like
yeah.
basically got Nora into swimming, didn't he? And then kept like coaching her and stuff. And obviously, like, I wonder if that's like similar for a lot of real life Olympians, because obviously, you know, you have to start, you know, quite young, don't you? Because, you know, they usually train for a really long time, don't they? And then they have their main career in their, like, I suppose, best years, and then they retire after a certain time because of, you know, the vigorous
Yeah.
strain on the body, I suppose, you know, because obviously it gets a bit harder as you get older. So, you know, I wonder if that's the same for a lot of Olympians, because, you know, her dad just like hammered her to be, you know, this, you know, potential Olympian swimmer, because, you know, they were like, oh, you know, you could be really great, you know, you have a talent, just push through and, you know, you'll go far and go places. And, you know, when you're young, especially a teenager, you're kind of like, oh, I don't really know what to follow or what to do or what to pursue. So sometimes you do kind of just go along with like the easiest version, but obviously at the end of the day, that's not always going to make you happy. Like,
Yeah.
so that was an interesting
That is
one.
true.
That
And
one.
well, before we go further with like going into the different lives, I would like to say I like absolutely adore this concept
Mm.
of because I like fully believe in parallel
Oh,
universes and all
same.
that.
I do.
So I really like the idea of, and I think at least one point all of us have had the thought of, oh, what would my life be like if I had made this choice or if I had done that choice instead. And it's just really fun and interesting. And I think the book, I mean, I like it overall, but it was very interesting when she met somebody else who was
Yeah.
also doing the same thing as her.
Yeah, I thought
And
that was interesting.
I just find it funny how in that life she gave it up because of disappointing sex.
I
I
mean,
just found it so
now,
funny.
let's be real. Life is too short for disappointing sex. Like, let's
Mm-hmm.
just be real. Nora knew what she was on about. I tell you,
Nora knew.
Nora knew.
She got all excited and then was like, oh, actually, nah.
She was like, actually, I could probably just go back to the library. Like,
I think I'll go
you know,
back to the
like,
library now.
you know, because obviously when she first goes there, so basically, guys, again, obviously we've already said the spoilers and the warning signs. So she tries to kill herself, basically. But in the process of that, she's kind of lingering somewhere between life and death. You know, when she's not quite fully gone, but not quite fully there. Almost a bit like when you're unconscious, I suppose, in a
Yeah.
coma. So in that whole time period, she goes to this place called the Midnight Library, and you know, like there's a character called Mrs. Elm, and she's the librarian because she's the one person in Nora's life who always showed her kindness and really cared about her through her teenage life, you know, and what she wanted, and looked after her a lot in school and stuff. So that was kind of like her main person, I suppose you could say, where she really felt a deep connection to them. Um, so I was just wondering, like, because obviously hers was a library, you know, because she liked a lot of books, you know, like National Geographic books and other stuff like that, philosophy books. And I wonder what ours would be. I mean, yours probably
Uh,
could be a library, Heather, to be
Mine
honest.
would totally be a library. If not a library, then maybe a video game arcade.
Mm, I don't know what mine would be. Maybe like coffee shop.
The coffee shop.
every
Oh,
iced
that'd be so
latte,
cool.
every
Like
iced
you,
latte is a different life. You
yeah,
take a
like
sip and
you choose a drink, and then that's like your life.
they could have like a big shelf of different flavors, like
Yeah,
raspberry, vanilla, plain. Like, and
play.
then you just pick from the flavor what coffee you want. Oh,
Oh god, then who would be your barista?
oh God, I don't know. I really don't know. I have to have a
Oh
think about
boy.
that. Who would be your librarian?
Oh, my librarian. I it would either be my mum or my dad.
Mm,
I'd say. You know what? It could even be Tristan.
yeah.
It'd be someone in my family. I know that.
I'm really not sure, you know. I'll have to have a think. We'll put it in the
Yeah.
description if I think of anything, if I don't say it in the video.
I like I find it interesting how in this book, like from this book, you can clearly tell at least the author's beliefs in it, and that he's keeps it in the realm of science, like scientific. Like even tries to explain the manifestation of the library and the librarian, of them being the brain interpreting what is going on.
Mm, which is true because we've discussed in
Oh
just
dear.
general, that we've had, like, God, what was I going to say? Um, oh God, it's gone. Like, that message just distracted me. Hang on.
Same.
Oh God, shambles, guys, already. Oh God,
It'll come back. It'll come back.
right, we'll come back. Like, God. Oh dear. Oh,
Oh boy. Well, yeah, I don't. I mean, there's not much to say about like the the story. I think the story is really good. It,
mm.
like we said.
It almost kind of follows like no structure whilst being structured. But I think for something
Yeah.
like this, because basically, like when she goes in and out of the lives, obviously it's still her, just in another life, as another version of her. So when she goes in and out of the lives, like that's like a new chapter or whatever. But I really like how the chapters are set up because some of them are really short, literally like a page,
Mhm.
maximum what, maybe like up to 10 pages a chapter probably. But also I like when chapters aren't just labeled as numbers. I
Oh,
like when they have a
same.
name for the
I love that
chapter.
these chapters
And
have
that's what
names.
this book has.
This book was like so easy to read. I always think when there's like short chapters that it makes books a whole lot easier to read, especially for people that don't like reading.
Yeah.
If you see short chapters and you're not intimidated and you can just easily like breeze through it. And I mean, even with the short chapters, there was some like I had some reading sessions where I went through like 70 pages
Yeah.
in an hour or an hour and a half. Like, I just didn't want to stop reading because I wanted to see the end of the life or I wanted to see the next life.
Yeah. I think
And
it's crazy though how she literally does go through like every possible life that she could ever live. Like, like in one she's an Olympian, in another she's a Cambridge graduate, in another she's a mother, in another she's a wife, in another she's a philosopher, in another she's in Australia. Like it's just wild
mm-hmm,
how many lives there are. And it's an interesting one because obviously like in our daily life, obviously, like what we said before about how you're like, oh, I wonder what it'd be like if I followed more that road or more that road or if I went down that road. And obviously if you're around our age, like early 20s, and you're, trying to find your feet and figure out what you want to do and figure out life, it kind of feels the same thing because you're kind of always like, oh, I don't know whether to do that because I don't know if it's gonna work out, or like, I don't know if I should do this or do that. Like you kind of really start to think of all the things you could do, but
mm-hmm,
90% of the time you kind of just sit for a while because you don't really know what you want to do. Like most of the time, I find I always know where I'd like to be, but I'm not sure what steps to take to get there. That's how I've felt through my early 20s anyway, everybody. But
yeah,
it's kind of nice how in the Midnight Library, obviously in our life, we would not see this in our real life, because obviously we don't know what happens, when you're between life and death, or once you've passed on. We don't know. Um, so it's kind of like a nice eye opener to see, like, you could be anything you want to be in your life, and the thing boils down to the same thing in every life. If you're not loved, or you're not cared about or care for others, or you're not happy, then that life
Yeah.
is still never going to be good enough. You could
That
be earning millions and millions of pounds, you could have your dream career, you could have like the biggest family, biggest house you've ever wanted, and if you're unhappy or you don't feel loved or cared about, then it doesn't matter. And it's the vice versa in any other life. And I
yeah.
think that's a really important message,
That is a
like,
very
for
important message.
anybody reading the book, whatever age, whatever your
Yeah.
occupation, whoever you are, like,
Yeah. I do think that's interesting because
mm,
every life up until the last one, she either sees like cuts on her arm, or she's taking antidepressants, or she's in therapy.
mm,
And it is very interesting that like goes through all of them. And I think she realizes that this thing that she thinks that will make her happy, she's still not happy in it.
yeah. And that can be quite hard hitting, like when you were
Mhm.
like, oh, I know that's going to make me happy. And obviously for a time it probably does, like in the beginning of, like, for example, there's one life, guys, where she becomes a famous rock star in a band because she had a band with her brother called the Labyrinths when they were younger. And then eventually they, in the life she actually is living, they disbanded it, and, they didn't eventually go on to, be a famous band. But in another life they did. But, in that life, although, touring around the world is an amazing thing, like, what an incredible opportunity and an incredible career to have in something you love doing. But in that life, her brother didn't exist. And, you know,
Yeah.
she was like gutted about that. So it's kind of like in every other life before the very end, she kind of gets one thing right in a life, but then there's something else that's not there. So then it's not right. Like, it's kind of like she's
Mhm.
trying to fit all the pieces together. But as she goes through, you learn that you can't have every single thing the same in every single life. Because
Yeah.
I've personally always believed in the butterfly effect. Like, any little
Mhm.
thing you do changes the outcome, or changes the future, or, like, any little thing that could change in your past would change your whole life. Change your whole concept of your life you're living, which is very
Yeah.
scary to think about, but I think it is very real. Like, just like,
Definitely.
sometimes I think, like, oh, imagine if I didn't go to Chester Uni, because that's where I went, everybody, and you probably don't know that. Um, because I met some of the bestest friends ever there, and I had such a good time. And at the time of picking my options, Chester wasn't even originally on my list. I just added it as an extra. Just to think now, if I hadn't have added it, I would never know all of my bestest friends now, and I wouldn't have had the
Mhm.
same experience of uni compared to what I had.
Well, if
Like,
I hadn't had decided to go to college instead of sixth form, I never would have met you.
exactly. And what an awful life that would have been, guys.
Indeed, it would have been terrible. Absolutely awful.
What a horrendous life that would have been. Like,
Mhm. But
God,
I mean, we're talking about the butterfly effect. The butterfly effect. And
our English today.
I know I my tongue got like stuck on the roof of my mouth. Um,
Give me tablets.
so so in the even in the last life, like the life that Nora is happiest in, I
Mm,
find it so interesting that when she goes to visit Bedford, like she goes back to Bedford, and she sees all of the things that are so different because she wasn't there to do the
mm,
things that she did in her root life.
yeah.
That's full on butterfly effect. I think the one that hits her the most is when she sees the kid that she teaches piano to actually getting arrested. And I
Like,
think
it's crazy.
it
It's
was like
crazy
that
how, like,
moment.
like, something that you do, like, for someone, or like you just do because you have to do it, or whatever you do, doesn't seem very significant to you at the time, but to somebody else, that hour or that thing that you do for them could be their everything, and
Hmm.
they're so thankful for that every single time you do it. And, for some people it's just an afterthought. They don't even think certain things are that important, when really they're everything you do every day holds an importance of some kind that you don't even realize. Like, you know?
But yeah, I thought I'd mention that.
Mm.
Because, yeah. I think this book is very relatable to anybody. Anybody that's had depression, really. Because I've had depression, but not so severe. Not to the point of where I've considered suicide.
Yeah.
But
Or
I can
even
still
like,
relate.
or even like just for people that have had moments where they feel like their whole life is like falling apart and they don't know what to do, or like they don't know where they're supposed to go, or say something, you know, like really traumatic has happened and they don't know how they're supposed to deal with it and where they're supposed to go from there and stuff like
Yeah.
that. It kind of just gets you to think about your life and like the whole universe on another big scale.
Yeah.
One thing that is really good, oh, this is the point I was going to say earlier, it's come back.
Okay.
You know, like obviously because it's still very scientific, the way Matt Haig writes about the concepts of parallel universes and the time of how they're, you know, like constructed and stuff. Despite all of that, it's still in a really easy to understand manner, the way it's written. So you don't feel like you're studying like for a science exam or something like that. You know, it's really easy to understand like what the author means and what the whole point of that is. Like it's not
Yeah.
hard to figure out how they work and what, you know, what they mean. Obviously not everybody probably believes in it, you know, like probably not everybody does. But even if you don't, I think it's just an interesting thing to think about, you know, like how, you know, how it's not just your one life, you know, like I think it's crazy really when you think about parallel lives or just like even just like other planets with other lives on, you know, like and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
It doesn't go, like, into the nitty-gritty of quantum
No.
physics and tries to explain it, which is good. Yes.
Mm.
I was gonna say something.
Oh, is it gone?
Yeah, you're talking.
Oh, sorry.
Don't apologize. There's so much to say. Okay, the first thing I'll say is I don't know about you, but like I immediately fell in love with Molly.
Oh, I
And
did.
I think that's really good writing when you bring in like a character like in one of the short lives near the end of the book and you don't want to see them go.
Yeah. It's almost funny really because when it got to that bit, so basically guys, so she goes into her last life where so this guy called Ash who comes does she how did she know him originally? Was he at school or
No, Ash was like her neighbor. No, Ash was the surgeon at the hospital that her mum was at, and he
oh
talked with her while she was whilst her mum was in surgery in the cafeteria.
oh
And
right, I just
and then
couldn't
Ash
remember.
also stops off at her workplace to like buy Simon and Garfunkel songbooks and things like that.
So and then obviously sadly, sorry for the spoiler, but it does happen right at the beginning when her cat dies. Honestly, so sad. Like but then like he knocks on her door and obviously says like, "Oh, your cat's in the road," and you know I think he's passed on. I think he's been hit by a car. Even though it turns out he was never hit by a car, he just had a was it a heart attack or
He had
something?
a motor disease or something which caused his heart to give out at a young age.
Mm. Even though like and you know like Nora goes through a process of feeling like, oh God, well I can't even keep like you know my cat alive. You know my cat doesn't even want to be with me, so she's in like a proper low state of mind. Um, and you know, Ash helps her like bury him in the garden and stuff, and you know, like you know, was like really kind to her in her time of need, basically.
Yeah.
You know, because that cat was kind of all she felt like she had, really. And then obviously he was just gone. Um, but it's interesting how like later down the line in her last life, so her and Ash are now together. Everybody, they're married, have their own house, and they have a daughter called Molly. It's interesting how in the last life, like it didn't even feel like it was about Ash. Like,
Yeah.
you know, like, because there's another life where she's with a guy called Dan, which is one of her ex boyfriends. Um, again, like when she follows the idea of going down the route of other people's dreams, because Dan had a dream of owning a pub in the countryside, and then she goes to that life and realizes that, you know, that relationship, as much as she thought she wanted it and to hold on to it, wasn't actually that worth holding on to, because it was actually quite toxic after
Mm-hmm.
she'd lived the life with him for however long. And it's interesting how in the last life, like, I feel like it's not even about Ash. And maybe that's just because of your perspective changes as a parent, like how, you know, once you have a child, it's all about them. Like, you know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like, it doesn't matter, you know, about anything else. Like, that's what I really felt from those chapters with Molly, that, like, you know, like, everything she was doing in that life was for Molly. And I feel like Nora almost had this kind of thing, like, you know, like, I need to figure out where I really need to be because I want Molly to exist. And Molly does exist in another life with another Nora, just not our Nora.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
I find it a bit strange how, because the whole thing with the Midnight Library is you're going through these. I don't actually think that it's for you to choose a different life and you to
No,
stay
I
there.
don't think
I
so.
really think it's to make you realize the potential in your own life and what you can do
Mm,
in your own life, your root life. But I
yeah.
just do find it a bit weird how, you know, if it's going by that concept, how when you go into a life, you don't have any, like, even any little memories about that
Mm.
life when you're just planted there. How are you expected to come to feel warm in a life when you don't even, you know, remember
I
people's
wonder,
names?
you know, like when you've been in a coma, if you've had like a really tragic accident, kind of like what happens in The Vow, if anybody's ever watched it,
Mm-hmm.
where Rachel McAdams' character goes through a car accident and, you know, she can't remember anything, but she's married to this guy, has this life, and obviously she doesn't even remember it or know it or realize it. Like, I wonder if it's kind of the same for people like that, you know, like, obviously it's a completely different version, but I wonder if that kind of feels a bit like going into, like, from the Midnight Library into a life that you don't know, even though, say, like 24 hours ago it was your life, but because of
Mm-hmm.
something else that happened to you, you can't remember that life. Like, I wonder if those people that go through that experience kind of feel the same thing.
Yeah.
Like,
Well, I mean, that's definitely what amnesia would feel like. It's just a bit odd how, you know, no at no point was she comfortable to say that I don't remember anything or that it would be suspicious. Because I don't remember there being a rule that she couldn't say that. You know,
I don't think there was.
I don't think there was a rule that you couldn't tell people about the Midnight Library or the. Well, I mean, there obviously wasn't because she full on talked about it with the other guy that was doing it, but then maybe
What,
that's a bit
Hugo?
different. Yeah, Hugo.
I suppose, though, you know, like when you say things like that, I suppose people would be like, oh, interesting. Like, you know, not really think
Yeah.
much of it,
I
would they
mean, you
really?
don't even have to like go into explaining it. You could just say, "Oh, I'm having a bit of amnesia.
Mm.
I forgot. I'm having a bit of like a foggy brain or something, like mind fog."
Does say that in a few of them, doesn't she? Like in the last life with Ash, when he keeps asking her, "Are you sure you're okay? Like, I'm worried about you." You know, she's like, "Oh, you know, it's just the wine. My mind's a bit fuzzy." Like, you
Mm.
know, but you know, I think in the life with Ash, it was kind of nice because he did show he really did care about her compared
Yeah.
to a lot of other lives that she'd lived. But you know, like, she really well, she claimed she really wanted to stay in that life because, you know, it was seemingly like the perfect life. But let's be realistic, everybody. There is no perfect life. You know, it's not all sunshine and rainbows all the time.
Mhm.
Life isn't, you know, you go through things and you experience things and you deal with things, you know, probably things you didn't think you'd ever deal with. And, you know, experience things you probably never thought you'd experience. But that is life, I suppose.
Well, you
As the,
can't have. I mean, it comes down to balance again. A lot of things in life is about balance, and you can't
mm,
have the good without the bad. Because if you don't have the bad, then you don't appreciate the good, or you don't really know how good the good is.
I
If you
think
don't have
that's
the
what
bad.
happened with Nora, isn't it? Because she
Mhm.
just was so in like a, I would say in like a state of like her mind was already foggy of what life is. Because I feel like, you know, we've
Mhm.
all been there. We've all had moments where we're like, oh God, you know, like you're not enjoying something in your life, or you're finding it really hard to navigate something you're going through in your life. But obviously, that doesn't mean that your life is awful. Obviously, you can feel a bit like that when you've had a lot of hard hitting things happen, and you're kind of like, well, you know, like we all do that thing of like, oh, why is this happening to me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's just one thing after another. You know, we've all felt it, but it takes a long time to change your mindset to go, well, what's it trying to teach me? Like,
Yeah.
not why am I going through it? It's more like, well, what's it teaching me? Like, what do I need to learn from it? And I feel like Nora needed to learn a lot during her time in the library from all the different lives she experienced. Because let's be honest, if she didn't need to learn much, like let's be honest, the event of her trying to kill herself probably never would have happened in the first place. Like, you know, like,
Mm-hmm.
but then
I
obviously there would have been no story, so there would have been no book.
yeah.
So
I remember something I was going to say earlier about this book. The book shows the importance of keeping in touch with the people that you love,
oh yeah,
like making sure that they know that you love them.
yeah,
Because I mean, this isn't to do with the book, but when I went to a therapy session, the therapist told me that one of the things with depression is not feeling loved or feeling like you're unloved or that you don't have anyone that loves you. That's one of the like key things. So it's very important to let the ones that you care about know that you care and that you love them and that you're there for them.
mm,
Even if it's just like checking in every once in a while. It's literally just like reaching out a hand.
yeah. Because it's clear to see that Nora didn't feel very
No.
loved.
And then
It's
you
hard
see how
though.
like I mean, obviously it's going to happen when everyone finds out that she tried to kill herself, but it's very interesting how you know, she actually starts talking with her brother again, and you know, they're very
Mm,
much like oh well, this was going on with me and I didn't want to talk to anybody, it wasn't just you. And yeah, it goes on from there. And I think at the end is very hopeful.
yeah. I feel like the end is kind of I mean, I suppose not realistic in terms of like, I mean, obviously, you know, people that have tried to commit suicide before, you know, some have been revived and saved and stuff. I'm not saying that that's never possible, but I think this book is a great example of like, you know, because obviously once you try to do something like that, when you're in such a, you know, deep, dark place and you can't see any other way of worthiness of yourself, let's say,
Mm-hmm.
to be living in this existence, most people don't get a second chance. Once once
Yeah.
you've done it, you know, that's it most of the time. You know, like you don't really get a second chance to, you know, go again in that life anyway. You know, once you've cut your roots off, let's say, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you're kind of gone, aren't you?
Yeah.
So I think this book is probably, you know, a good one for people who are like feeling depressed and stuff. Obviously, if you feel like it's going to trigger you, then stop. Don't carry on reading. But you know, if you can just get past the bit
Or
of
wait,
where it says
maybe
about,
read it, but like to skip to when she enters the library, which I can't remember. I will find
mm,
the page.
yeah,
It's page 24. If you skip to page 24 and you don't read the triggering stuff.
because it's quite eye opening.
Yeah.
Like it's,
Like
I would say it's worth the read.
that's when the real journey, you know, begins. The beginning bit is just set up and like helps you understand
Like she's at in
the
her
different
life and
characters in her life.
stuff.
And pretty much up until page 24 is the author giving Nora her worst day ever. Like, I can just imagine that Matt Haig was sat there thinking, okay, what can go wrong and how can I make everything go wrong? So, you know, starts with the death of her only friend, her cat.
Mm,
Then you get her losing her job. Then you get her side job basically ending because she only had one student. Then you have her running into a guy that was in her band who was a bit of a dick to her. Then you have her meeting somebody from school who seems to have their life together. And yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty much like a bad day. One of those days where everything that does go wrong, everything that could go wrong, goes wrong.
A classic.
A classic. And sometimes people, have those days.
But I think that the main chunk of the Midnight Library is definitely worth a read for like everybody.
Yeah. What else do we have to talk about?
I don't know. I mean, going back to the ending, in a way, obviously, like I would still say the ending is kind of like romanticized because obviously, like she comes back from the library, she wakes up. Obviously, she's not in a good way because in her actual root life, she's like tried to overdose or whatever she's done. I'm not sure. Can't really remember what she did.
She tried to OD on pills because
Yeah,
she comes back and vomits it all up.
Yeah, but like in that, most people wouldn't have got the second chance that she gets at the end of the book. But obviously, because it's a story, most of the time stories do have like a nice ending or at least a hopeful ending.
I think with a story like this, you kind of need a hopeful ending. With the message that is trying to... Don't you do that. With the message that is trying to convey, it has to have a hopeful ending. I mean, especially if you like look at the other works that Matt Haig has done, like he's done Reasons to Stay Alive, How to Stop Time.
I really want to read some of the other ones now that he's written because this is the first Matt Haig book I've ever read. Everybody,
same.
So, but I know he's quite popular in a lot of, his other books have been quite popular. I've just never got around to reading any of them until now.
I can see why. I mean, if his other books are similar to this, then they're, easy to read and
it's almost
have
kind
a
of
message of hope. And
it's almost kind of like a nicer self-help book because, like, it's not telling you as a reader like, oh, you need to do this to feel better or you need to try to do this to do better, feel better. You're following somebody else that you could potentially relate to, figure out what she actually wants, and obviously you could relate that back to you at any stage of your life, like so I think it's interesting.
But yeah, I will say that I did think that's how the book was going to end. I did think that it was going to end with Nora going back into her root life and her changing everything. But I don't think this book is not about, like, a lot of books aren't about the ending. It's about the journey. This one is especially about the journey and the character development and just the realization about life and things.
Yeah,
and that
definitely.
Maybe you need to put down your book of regrets.
God, I wonder what's in my book of regrets.
Oh boy. I wonder what's in mine. Then again,
I
imagine
like
I've been lightening it at least since.
I feel like these days there wouldn't be as much in there compared to say like maybe like 5 to 10 years ago.
And maybe that's why the like people say I have no regrets. Like if you don't have regrets, then you don't have this huge weight on your shoulder in your library.
Yeah.
In your art gallery.
In your coffee shop.
God, I hate to imagine what that person's painting of regrets looks like.
Oh God. Like
I reckon it's nightmarish.
Probably.
Oh boy. Well, if we have any final thoughts, I think we're pretty much at the end of talking about Midnight Library.
I don't know really. I would definitely recommend it. 110%. Like honestly, it's worth the read. Like it's just really eye-opening and really like it almost kind of makes you rethink about like where you're at in your life, like and what matters to you and like who matters to you and what you want to do. Like, because you can do
Mm-hmm.
anything you want, everyone. You can do anything you want, but, you can't do every single thing at every single minute all the time.
No.
Like,
And at the end of the day, life isn't about what you want to do.
mm,
Like your occupation or like this person that you really, really want to be in a relationship with. It's about you and your happiness.
yeah.
About doing what makes you happy. That
Because
brings you love and joy.
you're only living for you,
And
nobody
you're only
else.
living your life. You're not
It's like
living
I
someone
always
else's.
say, you can have like really close friends and family, but it's only you who is with you every single second at every single minute of your life. Like every
You
single millisecond, you're with yourself. Like,
you are the main character in your own story. Don't
yeah.
be a side character in somebody else's.
Mm,
I would also like to
yeah.
say that one of my favourite quotes of Mrs. Elm is
Oh, what a character. You'll love her,
I
everybody.
love her so
Mrs.
much.
Elm. What an icon.
I won't get it verbatim, but it's along the lines of want implies lack of,
Mm,
which actually relates
yeah.
to law of attraction beliefs.
Mm,
So if you're wanting something and you don't have it, then you're projecting the energy of you don't have that thing, so it won't come to you. But
mm,
if you aren't wanting, if you are active, I don't know how you change want from active, but if you have it, then it will come because you've already got
mm,
it. So it has to
yeah.
be
Well,
there.
yeah, because obviously in law of attraction or law of assumption is another one now. In
Mhm.
your mind, you have to, act as if you already have it. You've already experienced whatever it is you want or want to experience or want to have. You already have that thing. And, you have to visualize you have it, or else, well, obviously, if you follow the practices, obviously.
Mhm.
Otherwise, in that mind and way of thinking, then you'll never have it and it won't ever come.
But yeah.
I think another one of my favorite quotes in the book was, it's not what you look at, it's what you see.
Mhm.
Because obviously people, like say we all looked at a bunch of flowers, everybody, fair enough, yeah, it's a bunch of flowers, but not, everybody's going to feel different things looking at those flowers and think different things.
People
And
actually see different things as well because we don't all see color the same way.
yeah,
So yeah, I mean, if we're gonna end it, life is for living.
yeah,
Pretty much
it
the
is.
last thing. You live life. You don't read about it. You live it.
And I think it's kind of a nice one for right now because obviously the pandemic's quite, it's been quite a interesting year, everyone.
Mhm.
It's been quite a hard hitting year. And although obviously the start of the book feels quite like hard hitting because of what Nora does, but when she's in the library, it kind of takes your mind away from your life for a while and it
Yeah.
takes you to other lives. And it's kind of nice, even though obviously as you're reading them that she's although she's experiencing all these lives, she's not actually going to be there. She's not actually going to be in that life. She's
Mhm.
just experiencing an outer body experience, let's say, of going
She's
into
just
someone
drive
else's
buying.
life.
She's
Yeah,
just
it's just
drive
test
buying.
driving.
Just having a little
Oh,
go. Well,
but yeah,
she'll
would recommend
right.
100%.
100% would recommend. I gave it 5 stars
Oh,
on
same. I just
Goodreads.
gave it 5 stars
I
on
have to give it
Goodreads.
5 stars, and I'm surprised that on there the overall is 4 stars. Because rude, I know.
I mean, like the only tiny, tiny criticism that I have, but not enough for me to mark it down, was in Matt Haig's writing when he's like when he does the whole bit about how like, oh, in one life I was Olympian, one life I was this, and one life I was that, and it's
Mhm.
quite a long, stealthy process
Oh, you mean
of like
like
all the things that like just listing
the
all the things that she's
monologues and
been. Yeah,
like yeah.
but I feel like they're quite long, but I already got the point like halfway through the paragraph.
Mhm.
Like that's the only thing. But apart from that, everything else incredible, amazing. Like, and obviously
Fantastic.
that's like just a really small personal reading thing.
Mhm. Well,
Like,
I mean, you're free for criticisms. I don't think that any piece of art is ever done. There are always improvements that you can do. Because perfection is a concept that doesn't exist.
But obviously to some people, like, you know, I think it's just because, you know, like, I had already got the point when I'd read, like, a few sentences.
Yeah.
You know, I got why he was doing it, for the effect, to, like, really drill into you, like, you know, in one life I did this and this and this and this and this, and at the end of the day it doesn't matter what you do or who you are. It's, you know, who you have and what you have in your life that matters, you know, love and care and happiness. So yeah,
all right,
good read.
So everyone will be pleased to know I have an actual jar now for this is actually my old bath salts from Geeky Clean
Upgraded.
jar. I finished it. It smells like rose jam bath salt still. Everything in here stinks like rose jam.
I mean, is that a bad thing?
It's a good scent. It is a good scent, but it's just, I'm surprised. I like washed this as well. Like, I scrubbed it and it still smells really good.
Be embodied in there then.
So, yeah, no longer do we have a bag. We have a jar now. We have a cute little jar. So, let's go.
Oh, I wonder if it'll be one of mine or one of yours again. Because obviously this suggestion, everybody, was mine.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, one came out.
Oh.
It is.
Oh.
Yours.
Again?
Yeah, again. So what decided to pop out was How to Disappear.
Oh. I'm excited. That's in my box down there at the minute when I got Christmas. Oh, how exciting.
Well, that means I've got to go buy it.
Back to a crime book everywhere.
Yeah, good old crime book.
You know what's going to happen? We're going to get through all of mine, and then
if next month is another crime book from you, I'm overruling it and drawing another one. Because, like, I like crime, but I want to read some fantasy too, you know.
No, in all fairness, though, this one wasn't crime. So
this one wasn't crime. The one of your only ones that isn't crime.
You know what? Each time we submit new ones, I'll have to have 4 crime and just one random. Crime. Yeah.
Oh dear. Well, I mean, I don't know about you, but for me, I was picking books off my shelf that I wanted to read.
Oh yeah, I did do that for most of them.
In my defense, I have a variety. I don't just have all young adult fantasy, which is what I mostly read. I have got a variety. I've got some VR game stuff in there. I've got a freaking circus. You got mostly crime.
Wow.
How to Disappear.
Well, they're not all crime. They're just books I enjoy to read.
I know, mate. I know. At least I don't have to worry about getting a hardback book for this one, because I doubt there'll be one.
I don't know. I mean, I've got the paperback, so I assume there isn't a hardback for this one.
I don't think there will be. But who knows? Waterstones might surprise me. I'll go on there and I'll be like, hey, it's a hardback. And I'll be like, I'm not getting you this time. I'm going to get a hardback of a different book. Bye. Oh God. Can you imagine, like, because even like last time I still had like someone else who wanted to join our book club suggestions in there. The probability of getting 2 pulls of you for like of your suggestions is just mental.
You know, the pull is strong. The crime book pull is strong.
Well, it's not, because the first one that came out was Midnight Library.
Come to think of it, the 3 books once we've read this one, have all been my suggestions.
Pretty much. I suggested not Midnight Library. I suggested Magpie Society because I knew you already had it and wanted to read it, and I kind of wanted to read it too. So I just said, oh, let's do that one first. That way we get it out of the way. That, you know, we don't have an ooh and ah about what book do we read first, you know?
True.
So, there we go. How to Disappear, everyone.
I wonder if we'll actually learn how to.
If we'll actually learn how to disappear. Let's hope there's some twists and turns and all that jazz. If you decide to read with us, no pressure or anything.
I can't even remember who it's by, you know?
You can't...
Can't remember who it's by.
Okay. Yes, so subscribe to join the party. Excuse me.
Oh, God. It's chaotic.
Pony slap the like button with consent and leave your comments in the dungeons below. Be sure to go and check out katieluderslife.com. Go have a look. And we will see you in the next book club. I will see you sooner than that, but Kate will definitely be here for the next book club.
Yeah, I'll be back.
She'll be back. Yeah. Love and light. I always get really weird when I'm supposed to start.
It's always a weird thing, isn't it?
Around.
Like, you kind of anticipate it.